Welcome to the Rain Quarter. My name is LD Valencia. Today I want to talk about the inspiration for this book, The Undying Dragon, and the series of Paladin's Prayer. Like, where did this idea came from? So for me, this was actually the very first idea I had for a book before my Gifted World series. But this book didn't come about because of one idea. It kind of was the culmination of several ideas that happened over several years, decade plus, right, of different like inspirations and kind of like putting those different pieces together, and finally, boom, I figured out how to make it work, right? So that kind of became this book. So the very first inspiration was the video game Fable. In Fable, your character's look is determined by whether they're good or evil. And so I had this idea of what would it be like if there were these paladins that their armor was based off what they were like as a person, right? Like a very kind of like silver-tongued, maybe like sneaky person might have like a snake-themed armor, and maybe someone that's very wise and, clever would have like an owl-themed armor or something, right? So that idea was the very first idea I had, but I didn't really know what to do with it. And then 2010, I came up with the Gifted World because, I talked about how that idea came about with my students and how it kind of inspired it and how that kind of took over the last 15 years of my life. Well, very positively, I feel, at least. So fast forward, my next big inspiration for this book, the Paladin's Prayer series, was Dungeons and Dragons. About 2016, I moved to Nashville, started playing D&D with some buddies because of a podcast I saw. So I'm in the throes of writing The Gifted World, and I see a podcast, more of a YouTube video, actually, I should say, not a podcast, a YouTube video on a TED Talk on how many authors, many writers, many screenplay and directors kind of cut their teeth on D&D. So I decided I'm going to play D&D. So I spent from 2016 to 2021, I think it was when he stopped playing my game, at least. I was the DM of a game, and if you're a DM, you're pretty much an author. Those two skill sets they go hand in hand. Like, you're just not putting it down maybe in a chapter format, but you're really telling a story and doing everything that an author is doing. And so that was really fun for me to kind of explore that and learn, like, stretch those creative muscles. I feel like being a DM really helped me stretch as an author and become more creative and lean into inspiration a little bit more. So I did a lot of research on, D&D, dragons, all this stuff, and I created this world, and eventually that became the world that this for this book, this became the setting. So that was kind of the next big one. I didn't use the vanilla Faerun or whatever the current one is for D&D, specifically. I decided to make my own world, and some people told me like that's kind of crazy to like start from zero and create your own world, but I kind of wanted to do that. So that world, I call it Valheim, which I know is a video game now, but I came up with it because my name's Valencia and I thought it was kind of cool, right? So anyway, Valheim became my world, and the Queendom of Tenedris was in my world. I had a different name at the time. I changed the name a little bit to fit this, to kind of make it more like snappy, in my opinion. So that was the next big inspiration, was D&D. Kind of moving on a little bit, I eventually got into Stormlight Archives. And in Stormlight Archives, they use a lot of gemstone magic, and gemstones kind of became a catalyst for me as well. I decided to, in my world, use gemstones as kind of like, they're created by the dragons and elemental magic, so they're linked together. So there's a lot of gemstones / elemental magic in my world. So like, rubies are used for fire magic, right? And opals are used for like light magic. And onyx is used for like healing / necrotic magic and stuff like that. So, and each of those is tied to a dragon type. There's onyx dragons, which have that kind of magic, and ruby dragons, which have fire abilities and fire breathing and stuff like that. So after kind of reading that book series, I was like, oh, that kind of could be where the catalyst for the paladin's armor comes from. And so I decided, I kind of came with like the runesmithing, and that kind of was like kind of a finishing touch for me. It was like, okay, that's kind of put together. I have this world, I've created this queendom. There's already dragoons there that I kind of like created and put in there and everything. And I kind of like all the pieces kind of like clicked together after reading like Stormlight Archives and kind of figuring out that gemstones, or in my world, they call them heartstones from a dragon. They like a dragoon, or it could be a knight, cuts out the heartstone out of the dragon, and they get that runesmith, and then they can summon their armor. And so that kind of became like the thing that kind of like was the last piece of the puzzle and kind of like snapped together for me. And so I was finishing up the last of the Gifted World series, and I started having ideas and started like planning and outlining and doing all the things to kind of like prepare for it, because writing a fantasy novel is really, really crazy. There's a lot that goes into it. It's not just, start writing, at least for me. I think for some authors that discovery write, that could totally be their thing. For me, I like to plan. I'm a planner. I'm a hardcore plotter. So those were three of the big inspirations for me. Was the first game Fable that kind of gave me that initial idea, and then playing D&D, and then reading Stormlight Archives. I also want to give like an honorable mention to A Song of Ice and Fire, because I started reading A Song of Ice and Fire while I was playing my D&D game, and it definitely inspired me because around that time my characters were very high level, and so I was like, I'm going to do a little bit more political intrigue stuff. So they became like lords and ladies, they became like involved and ensconced in the bureaucracy and the nobility and all that stuff, and so I kind of want to do that. So that kind of like shaped the world and the queendom of Tenedris, was reading that and kind of DMing and having some of that political intrigue interest in there. So it was definitely an important one for me, I feel like. So it gets an honorable mention, if not a full-on inspiration spot for me. So those are the ones that really inspired me to create the book series, A Paladin's Prayer. And without those inspirations in that a very, very long time period, I don't know if this book would have ever come to light. So I want to hear from you authors as well, and readers. What are things that inspire you? What are some books that have been big inspirations for you and helping you create your books? I'd love to hear those in the comments. So thanks so much for joining us in the Writing Corner. My name is LD Valencia. See you guys next time.